Our next speaker is a really great transition, actually, from speaking about the indigenous ideas of living in harmony with nature, because that was such an important part of the Ecuadorian experience in terms of putting forward rights of nature and rights of Mother Earth in their constitution. Natalia Greene, who's born in Ecuador, coordinates the Rights of Nature program for Fundación Pachamama in Ecuador, and she's also the president of SEDENMA, the national coordinating entity of Ecuadorian environmental NGOs. And she holds a political science degree from Glasgow, Ecuador, and a specialization from Andina University on climate change. It's my pleasure to welcome Natalia Greene.
Thank you, Shannon. It's really a pleasure sharing this amazing panel with these really amazing and inspiring people. As you know, in 2008, Ecuador became the first country in the world to recognize nature as a subject of rights. This was not only important, but it was a huge step for humanity. And I even want to quote Cormac. We invited him to celebrate this achievement in Ecuador. And he said, species all over the world are thanking Ecuador right now for the great achievement of recognizing that nature is the subject of rights in its constitution. And I know he was right, because I know that from that moment, the rights of nature movement really started having a lot of strength. People had been writing about it. People had been realizing that it was the moment to evolve towards this recognition. But I think that Ecuador really made a strong point in recognizing that nature is the first country in the world. And I can tell you that it's, when we speak about it, it's really weird to understand that it's the only country in the world that recognizes that nature has the right to exist. That means that the rest of the world doesn't think that nature has the right to exist. Only humans and corporations. So it is a huge step, and it's a huge step that the world needs to acknowledge, and it's a huge step that the world needs to help us, because we definitely have a huge responsibility of making this happen in Ecuador, and really put this thing going forward. What happened in Ecuador is that we, of course, we are a biodiverse country, one of the most biodiverse countries in the world. We had horrible cases of destruction, like the Cherokee Texaco case that destroyed a large part of our Amazon rainforest. And it was a time where the people of Ecuador were asking for a change, a huge change. And I think that rights of nature came in the right moment and even in the right time. I can tell you that we even had a ceremony of shamans from all over Ecuador gathered in the assembly place right the night before we had the rights of nature legislation passed in the Constitution. And they did a spiritual ceremony to bring the spirit of Mother Earth towards that room that the next day approved in a majority that nature should be a subject of rights. So this is not something that happened all of a sudden. It was a huge process. Lawyers, for example, were really obstacle. They didn't think that we could expand the nature of rights to include nature as a subject. So it was a really amazing achievement in Ecuador. Of course, you should understand that this is not something that happens from one day to another one. In 2008, we had rights of nature in the Constitution, but it's not that the country changed all of a sudden. In 2009, for example, we had a mining law that for us as environmentalists was definitely going behind what we had achieved with rights of nature, because it was allowing mining in Ecuador. However, things started happening, and I think that we should acknowledge what Paula was saying, that in 2010, in April 2010, more than 35,000 people made it to Cochabamba and wrote the Universal Declaration for the Rights of Mother Earth, which means that this is not something that we had come up by ourselves. It was like the people of the world were telling, especially their governments, you are not achieving anything in climate change negotiations, and we need to move forward in a really drastic way. We need to recognize, change this paradigm and recognize that nature is a subject of rights, and we need to change our relationship with nature. And the Universal Declaration hence is a really important part of the work that we do, because we're telling the world that this is not something that Ecuadorians came up with. This is something that the world is coming up to say, we need to change this paradigm. And of course that gave us a lot of strength to even go back to our government and say, well, we need to do something about it if we have rights of nature in our constitution. I can understand that this is not easy, because Ecuador is part of a huge model of a system that is based on consumption, that is based on capitalism, and that is really hard to get out of that system. And I understand this is not a transition that happens overnight. However, us as environmentalists are definitely pushing towards this transition to happen as fast as possible. Because the environmental movement in Ecuador was definitely strengthened by rights of nature. If you think about it, the abolitionist movement was strengthened, of course, when they were fighting against slaves being treated as objects. The feminist movement, of course, was fighting for the rights of women to vote. As environmentalists, of course, our fight is now not only strengthened but has more sense and has an objective when we are recognizing that nature is a subject of rights. So as I was telling you, yes, one of the things that we are really worried about in Ecuador, and so I was telling you the situation of what's happening, is that in 2012 we have just signed the first mining contract that is going to be like a mountaintop removal for open pit mining for copper. So of course this for us is going behind what we have achieved. And we are definitely saying we need a transition. We cannot deepen the model of extractivism. We need to move forward. We need to move forward in thinking that we need to have a new relationship with Mother Earth. But what's interesting in Ecuador is that the discussion level is completely different. If this is done in Argentina, Argentinians will say, well, try to do it as with the best technology as possible. We don't want it, but okay, try to do it as clean as possible. The discussion in Ecuador is much different because we have rights of nature. We have a discussion where we're saying, do we really need open pit mining? Where is this money going to? And this is what's most important, the thing that this is changing. In Ecuador, for example, we have really important cases. We have the Vilcabamba case. We have there's a rights of nature judiciary in Galapagos, where, for example, some civil society has been able to be part of a court system representing sharks. You know, it's a whole different discussion when you have rights of nature in the Constitution. So this is definitely something that to move forward, and therefore I definitely congratulate the Ecuadorian delegation, because it's the only one that in this negotiations right now is moving forward at least a language that is wanting to bring rights of nature and Mother Earth into the discussion. And this is important because that discussion changes. The discussion changes when you say, do we really need that? Can we do something different? And where are the limits of nature and where are our limits? And I thank the Ecuadorian delegation for that, and I feel that there's a lot of work to be done, but we cannot do that by ourselves in Ecuador if the whole world is still based in a system based on capitalism. This is something that needs to be a planetary change, and that is why I feel it's so important to move along with this movement and strengthen this movement, because what brings us together is planet Earth. Thank you very much.